Welcome, everybody, to Google Drive for Small Business. Google Drive for Small Business is a Web and Beyond webinar. This is our series that talks about marketing and managing your small business on the web, mobile, social media, and beyond. And for those of you who don't know me, welcome. I'm Ray Sidney Smith. I am the president of W3 Consulting and the managing director of W3C Web Services. And W3 Consulting provides consulting services both in the digital marketing space, so think about content marketing, SEO services, that kind of thing. And then on the other side, we actually do training of small businesses on how to actually do that work. So we want to make sure that our small business owners are empowered to not just hire people to do those things, but also to know how to do them themselves when they have to DIY it. And in addition, I have W3C Web Services, which is our subsidiary that provides WordPress hosting, VPS, dedicated shared hosting type services, as well as domain name registration services and the like. So if you have any of those needs or whatnot, feel free to reach out to us and we're happy to help you there. More pertinent to today's discussion is that I am a Google Small Business Advisor. And what that means is I'm one of the Google Small Business Advisors, and my focus and concentration is on productivity. Basically, the tools that you would otherwise use when you have something like Google Workspace for business, the business product that Google provides that has all of the various productivity tools bundled together. And I also happen to be one of the Evernote certified consultants and one of the 8 global regional leaders, and I happen to cover North America. So that's just a little bit about me. And so welcome to you all today for the agenda for Google Drive for small business. What we're going to do today is we are going to talk about what Google Drive is. I'm going to cover those pieces so that you have a good understanding about what the tool is, what the technology is, how it works, so that you have as good an understanding as I can provide in terms of what you need to do in order to decide whether or not you're going to use Google Drive in your own business. And then we will hop actually into Google Drive. I'm going to show you around Google Drive so you can have a pretty good understanding about what the interface is going to look like and how it's going to feel as you make your way through the technology. I'll leave time at the end for Q&A. As I noted earlier, you guys are in 2 different systems, so I will check back and forth between those systems and answer any questions that you have when we get to Q&A. So feel free to ask your questions in the chat or in the question panel, and I will answer those when we get to the end. All right, with that, let's take it away. Let's start off with what is Google Drive so that everybody has an understanding of what Google Drive really is. And the last time I did this webinar was, I think, 6 years ago when Google Drive was, not new, but still a nascent product in Google's ecosystem. But at its core, Google Drive is basically a web-based file storage and synchronization service. I'm going to explain what some of those terms are in a little bit so you got a better understanding about what I mean when we talk about file storage and synchronization and backup and so on and so forth. But at its basic sense, think of Google Drive as a place where you can place files in what we call, quote unquote, the cloud. Now, the cloud is actually not in the sky. Most of it is in data storage centers around the planet, and a lot of that data actually transit via huge pipelines of cabling that runs under the sea, so underground and underwater. So we have lots and lots of cabling all over the world that connects these servers, and your files are basically being stored in those places so that you have backup, redundancy, and synchronization. Google Drive provides all of that in this platform so that you're able to handle your files in just a more seamless way as a business. And again, like I said, I'm going to talk about backup, redundancy, and synchronization very shortly, but that's basically at its core what Google Drive does. It takes your files and it places them in this cloud storage environment for you to be able to access in many different places. Google Drive is also beyond that a set of other tools and services. Basically, Google built out Google Drive to be this storage and synchronization service. And then they decided, okay, we're going to get creative and think about how we can really do all these other fun things with it. And so they actually provide a whole bunch of integrated tools that you can use within Google Drive. And we're going to talk about some of them today. And then last but not least is the collaborative functions of Google Drive. What I really love about Google Drive is that I'm able to interact and engage with my team directly within Google Drive in the applications that I'm using. So if I'm in Google Docs, for example, I can not only share that Google Doc with my staff, but I can actually be in real time chatting with them in the document. It's not the text of the document, it's a chat along the side. And if I needed to meet with them, I could just click on a button and immediately bring up a Google Meet instance where then now I have a Google Meet video meeting with my team and I can talk to them in the document while we're live editing that document together. So the collaborative functionality of Google Drive is just incredibly powerful once you start taking advantage of many of the features that are built in. And we'll talk about the plans available for Google Drive within Google Workspace and otherwise. But a lot of these features are actually free in the consumer version of Google Workspace, and then you can get even more storage and other capabilities when you add on top of that in terms of the Google Workspace Essentials and then the Google Workspace for business accounts. So you have a lot of options when it comes to Google Drive in that sense. I wanted to take a little bit of time, though, as I said, to talk about file storage and synchronization. When we talk about file storage and synchronization, we frequently don't understand as small business owners all of the ICT, the information and communications technology terms that are kind of thrown about. And so I wanted to explain this. As a former CTO, I just feel like it's important to always educate people about these IT and ICT terms that people use and maybe don't understand as well. So first and foremost, think about Google Drive in terms of backup as a separate copy of data. So while we're thinking about Google Drive from the perspective of, oh, I can put my files in the cloud and therefore just be, you know, they're safe. Many times what people are doing is really synchronization, and so they're not actually keeping a true backup. A backup really is a separate copy of your data that is separate from the active data that you're working with. So say that if you're working on a paper file and you write on that that piece of paper and you go to a photocopier and you make a photocopy. That photocopy then gets filed in another folder, and that is a backup, right? You're going to continue working on the existing file paper that you're working on, and if you make any changes to it, it's not going to change the photocopied version that's in another folder. In order to back that up again, you would have to take that again to the photocopy machine, and the latest version you would then photocopy and place into the folder again, and that again becomes a backup. Very, very different than the concept of synchronization. When we utilize synchronization in Google Drive, we are actually changing files across all of our devices, not in near real time, but we're changing those files as they are edited across devices. So say for example I had my Google Pixel 5, I had my iPad, and I had my laptop, and I was changing a file on the laptop. Well, with Google Drive using its synchronization capabilities, as I was changing documents on the laptop, they would then update and write over the existing files on both the tablet and the phone. That is synchronization, and that creates a sense of sameness across all of the devices. Now, if I delete that file on the laptop, then it's going to delete it on the phone and the tablet as well. That is synchronization, and that's how synchronization really works. Now, Google gives us the various levels of this within Google Drive. Because we could do this on the desktop, we can actually synchronize files that are both built into Google Drive and those files that are not Google Drive specific. Like I could put a zip drive into Google Drive. Google Drive doesn't do anything with zip drives. It could just hold it. But we could do that, and we can actually synchronize it from our desktop as opposed to from the cloud. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky for you to understand, but Google Drive gives us the ability to host files completely and exclusively in their cloud services, meaning that they won't live on our devices. And it also gives us the ability to take files that are on our local systems, on our local devices, and those local files are then synchronized across the many different devices as well. If you've ever used Dropbox, Dropbox basically does the same thing in that sense. It doesn't have the built-in applications that Google Drive does, and that really what makes Google Drive so much more powerful than, say, a Dropbox. And then last but not least is redundancy. And a lot of people don't realize this when they're using Google Drive, but Google is doing a whole bunch of magic in the background. And by magic, I mean lots of technical work in order to make sure that you have redundancy. And what redundancy really means is that in those cloud servers, those servers that are sitting all around the planet, they are running hard drives, mostly SSDs today. These are on your screen right now. These are actually, you know, spinning hard drives, but typically they're solid state drives now today, so they're SSDs, meaning that they don't have moving, spinning disks. But the point is that they fail, right? Hard drives fail. You've probably had a hard drive or some other kind of computer that you've been using or phone die on you at some point in your usage of it, and that's what happens. And if you had data on it that wasn't backed up in some way, shape, or form, that was it. Poof, the data goes away, right? Well, what Google does is that it's actually running your data in multiple planes of existence, so that as a hard drive, say, dies on one of their servers, your data doesn't go and disappear. Your data actually continues to run concurrently, and you don't miss a beat. You never notice when redundancy takes over, and a file may have been been in the process of being utilized, and therefore when there was a hardware failure, it went down, but you continued using your file and never really even noticed. That's Google Drive's magic in the background. I'm getting a question here about a clarification. If you've synchronized and deleted a file you've worked on, is it automatically deleted in a backup drive? If you're doing a true backup, then you are then it wouldn't be deleted, right? Like, that's the point, that many people are using file synchronization, and even in the language I'll show you a bit later, Google defines that as quote unquote backing up, but it's actually wrong. It's not backing up. It's actually synchronizing your files. And so you have to be very, very cautious about the terms backup versus synchronization. If you are truly backing up, that means that file is being moved to another location and you are not working on that file in any way, shape, or form for some period of time. And then you may create another copy and put that in the backup. And that is truly backing up. Backing up means that you're not working on the current file. So if you're working on the file, then it's not a backup. If you take a copy of that file and put it someplace else, then that is a backup. Okay? So if you have the ability to delete it and it deletes everywhere else, then that's not a backup. Is basically a good frame of reference. Okay, so let's talk about Google Drive's core apps. Beyond backing up, synchronization, and redundancy, Google Drive provides these core applications within the system that it can store. Now, as I said, Google Drive can hold almost any type of file that you can put up in it. So say if you're a graphic designer and you wanted to put an AI file in it, Adobe InDesign file, INDD files, whatever you wanted to put in there, you could just basically upload it into Google Drive and it will just hold the file. It can't do anything. It can't read anything in it. It's just basically going to hold the file. But Google Drive's additional features are that Google Drive actually allows you to utilize these applications inside of its ecosystem. So it's both storing the file, but also helping you manage and manipulate the file in some way, shape, or form. And the four ones that you can use at its core are, of course, docs, slides, sheets, and forms. So I can give some corollaries here, some analogies here that will help you kind of understand that. Docs is a writing application, so think of it as a document editor, and the best equivalent would be Microsoft Word or LibreOffice Writer. And so with Docs, you're capable of doing almost everything that you could do with Microsoft Word, but you are in the cloud now. And Microsoft even has followed Google's direction here, and they've created a Microsoft Word Online where you can actually do this in the cloud as well. So you're doing this from within your web browser. Now, Google Docs is, as I said, really powerful because in Docs, Slides, and Sheets, these specific three applications allow you to do the types of collaboration and editing that I talked about earlier, where you can actually do live editing, you can share that document, you can chat in the document with others in your on your team or outside of your team, like clients or otherwise, and you can actually launch meetings directly within the applications so that you're sharing the document and meeting by video or audio directly inside of those files. So Google Docs gives you that capability, and when you are using Google Docs, everything is stored within Google Drive, and when you load up docs, they don't actually live outside of Google Drive. Think of it from the perspective that even if you were to synchronize, we're calling this synchronization here. When we synchronize to our desktop, you're never actually saving Google Docs to your desktop. So say you installed what we'll talk about in a bit, the Google backup and sync Google Drive application or the Google Drive for Desktop application for Teams. When you download those to your computer and run the software, you will never see a Google Doc appear in your system as a native file that you can open. It will always open it in the browser. Docs, slides, sheets, forms, and many of the other applications we're talking about can only run in the browser. Okay, and that's really important. It also runs inside of their web app. So if you have iOS or Android, you'll be able to run the web applications and open up docs, slides, sheets, forms, and otherwise. But the point is that those are really cloud-based applications, not desktop ones. So if you think about Microsoft Word and the Google Docs example, you can see a Word document synchronized to Google Drive, and it's a file that lives on your system. But if you look at the Google Docs item, it will say 0 kilobytes because there's no data being held on the file drive system for your local system. So it's all cloud based. Okay, next is Slides. Slides is the best equivalent to Microsoft PowerPoint. And then Google Sheets. Google Sheets' best equivalent is to Microsoft Excel. And so it creates Excel workbooks, style workbooks, and they allow you to be able to run spreadsheets and all kinds of other fun formulas and applications directly within the Sheets environment. It's actually very, very powerful because it gives you a cloud-based environment in which you can write all kinds of sophisticated applications directly on top of the Google Sheets platform. And what's really cool is that because these are all in the same environment, they're able to embed parts of each other within each other. So I can go into Docs and I can actually embed parts of a sheets spreadsheet into my Google Docs, and then they stay synchronized. So it's really cool in that sense. Okay, Google Forms is a survey and questionnaire tool. You can see a live example of this if you go to our website w3cinc.com and go to our contact page. You'll actually see an embedded contact form, and we've created that form and we've embedded it on our website so folks can go ahead and contact us. So Google Forms gives us the ability to create internal surveys. We have all kinds of internal surveys for logging timesheets and all kinds of other fun things, but we can also then publish it on the outside and allow people to see that form and communicate with us in that way as well. So those are the Google Drive's core apps, those four: Docs, Slides, Sheets, and Forms. But Google Drive doesn't stop there. It extends to a whole wide variety of other applications, some that are owned by Google and others that are not. So what we do is we can see these other applications in the system. So we have Google Drawings, we have Google My Maps, we have Google Sites, we have Google Apps Script, Google Data Studio, and Google Jamboard. Those are the 6 that will appear by default under the More section. So when you go to Google Drive, you will see underneath the Google Drive new button, which we'll get to when we look at it. You'll just click on the new button and you'll see in the drop down More. If you click on More, you'll see Google Drawings, Google My Maps, Google Sites, Google Apps Script, Google Data Studio, and Google Jamboard. Now, in order, Drawings is a vector graphics studio tool. It allows you to create vector graphics and edit vector graphics. So if you have any need for that kind of graphic editing, it's there and available to you, and it's really great. You can do flow charts. You could do all kinds of fun things inside of it as well, but this is primarily for vector graphic editing. Then Google My Maps, and Google My Maps allows you to be able to create your own maps on top of Google Maps. So in essence, if you wanted to create, you say you had a business that had a number of locations, you could actually create a Google My Maps map and create that custom map and then display that in different places on your website or even within other materials. Then there's Google Sites. Google Sites allows you to create websites, and you can create them for internal or external purposes, what we call an intranet. For internal purposes, you're only sharing that with, say, your team, or say you're sharing that only with clients, and or you can do an extranet or a public website where you're sharing that with people outside of your network and or the public. And then we have Google Apps Script. Google Drive is actually built with uh, an application ecosystem in mind. So you can actually build applications utilizing all of the tools that we're talking about here. Won't get too far into that, but just know that if it's not built with Google Drive already, you can make it happen through AppScript. Like there's really almost nothing that Google Apps Script can't do within the Google Drive ecosystem. Google Data Studio is a part of the Google marketing platform, and that allows you for free to be able to pull together data sources from many different places and then visualize that data. So, say that you have your email list and you have your marketing data coming from Google Analytics, and you have some other data coming from your accounting and invoicing software. You could pull all of that into Google Data Studio, and then just with a few clicks, visualize that data to see how it all makes sense in your world. And then Jamboard is a really cool product. So it's actually two products. It's a physical hardware product that you could buy. It's several thousands of dollars, and I don't suggest you need to buy one of those. But the online version of Google Jamboard is a free tool that Google gives you by going to jamboard.google.com, or you could just go here on Google Drive and click more and then Jamboard, and it creates a whiteboard whereby you can, with as many people as you want, jump into and whiteboard together in the Google Drive experience. So Jamboard is just really great for that kind of thing. Now, if Google Drive doesn't have what you need, never fear, because if you go into the more options, you will see that there is another option at the bottom where you can add additional tools. So you can see here in this demo account that I have, I've added several other tools. So for example, we use a digital signing tool for our contract signings. And so we use HelloSign. So if somebody needs to sign a contract, I could just go into Google Drive, click on New, click on More, click on HelloSign, and it launches HelloSign so that I can go ahead and get the contract ready for a client to sign. We've added all kinds of other tools over time to our own systems, but just know that, and I'll show it to you when we get there, but you can add new and additional features into Google Drive as you need to in order to be able to extend its capabilities. So Google Drive doesn't end just because its applications are not there. You can actually add other applications as well. I get this question a lot, so I just want to answer it up front, which is that who owns your files? And Google Drive is very clear. That is Google, and Alphabet, the company that owns Google, is very clear about who owns your files. I've added this emphasis, so I just made it big and bold so everybody's aware. But you own your intellectual property rights. Everything you put into Google Drive, if it is yours, it is yours. And Google takes no claim over that. And it's really important for us to be aware that as business owners, we want to make sure that the data that we're putting in any service is not compromising our intellectual property rights. And so just have confidence in the fact that both on the consumer side as well as on the Google Workspace business side, Google is not taking any claim to anybody's personal property, certainly not their intellectual property. And so here they make that affirmative in their terms of service. Okay, so with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and hop us over into Google Drive and walk you through some of the pieces here so that we're all kind of aware. If you have any questions so far, feel free to throw those in the chat, and I will be happy to answer those while I am transferring us over to the other window. Okay, so you should be now seeing a new browser. And so let's talk about Google Drive. Google Drive comes in 3 flavors. We're going to be talking about really only 2 of them here. And I do talk about both the consumer version, that is Google Drive for individuals, as well as Google Drive for teams, because many times I see that a lot of the solo and freelance business owners that I come into contact with are utilizing Google Drive in a consumer account. And so I'd like to show you all what that's all about, in addition to the Teams version, which is built into Google Workspace for business. And so as we've already talked about, Google Drive is a kind of multifaceted tool that provides both the ability for you to host files in the cloud. It allows you to be able to collaborate using these applications with others, and it allows you to be able to find those things. At its core, it's built by Google, so Google knows search, and so we're capable of really understanding the capabilities of Google when we go to google.com. Google brings those search capabilities to Google Drive, and we'll see some of those when we dip into the tool. I just wanted to make a note, as I said, you have Google Workspace on the consumer side now, and Google Workspace comes with Google Drive. And so if you have a Gmail account, you have a Google Drive account, and you get a standard 15 gigabytes of storage, I believe it is, across your Gmail and other accounts, and we'll talk about how that really gets allotted in a bit as well. But the idea here is that with Google Workspace on the consumer side, you get access to Google Drive and all of the features that we're going to be talking about. I'll tell you when those features are limited to Google Workspace for Business, so that you're capable of understanding that at that point. On the business side, then, if you are really trying to up your game. You have email, you have calendar, but you really want to utilize Google Drive and its capabilities. Google has created something called Google Workspace Essentials. Google Workspace Essentials, in essence, goes ahead and gives you the features and functions of Google Drive beyond your calendar and email. So with Workspace Essentials, what they're doing here is for a monthly fee, they are giving you access to Google Meet so that you can host meetings and so on and so forth. You can host files using Google Drive. You get 100 gigabytes per user and 2 terabytes of pooled cloud storage across all of your users within that company environment. You can share calendars. You have all the other pieces as we talked about before. Chat comes with this, but you have docs, sheets, slides, forms, Google Sites, and otherwise in the system. So it's all there. The thing that really is provided by using Google Workspace Essentials is that if you have, say, Microsoft 365 and you're running your email in another host or whatever else, this gives you the capability of really interacting and collaborating utilizing these Google Workspace tools beyond that, right? It's a supplement or a complement to that. And it really gives you strong administrative security and controls in that environment as well. So that's really what Google Workspace Essentials is for. So when we talk about Google Workspace in the proper sense, Google Workspace Beyond Essentials really gives you all of those features in addition to the primary Google Drive features. So those who want Google Drive inside of a controlled environment for your business, you can go ahead and get Google Workspace, either the starter, the standard, or the plus plan. Those each come with different grades of features and so on and so forth across the other products. Inside of Google Drive, specifically what it's doing is just giving you more storage per user and greater controls over the usage of those storage of those files in storage. When we talk about Google Drive also, Google Drive gives us two different applications. And here we're going to talk a little bit about those two applications so that you have an understanding of what we're talking about here. So we have, for individuals, on the individual side, if you have a consumer account, Google Workspace account that's not paid, you would be using the Google Drive backup and sync file, this file here. You go ahead and download it. It allows you to be able to synchronize files that are on your system and or back up those files from your system. We'll talk about that in a bit. And those files then get added to Google Drive and count against your storage. Okay. Now you can purchase more storage if you want to, and I'll show you that in a bit. And the idea here is that you download this application to your desktop, and now you have the ability to choose and select particular files that you want to either synchronize or back up to Google Drive on a regular basis. On the team side, if you have Google Workspace, you have Google Drive for Desktop, which recently got actually a very nice upgrade. And so Google Drive for Desktop is the one you would use if you're using Google Workspace with a paid plan. And this just gives you the ability to have multiple accounts, the ability to switch between those accounts, and really navigate among the various parts of Google Workspace on the team level that are just important for a team to be able to utilize. What I want to do just very, very quickly is show you what the Google Drive the backup and sync looks like, and some of the pieces you need to pay attention to when you are utilizing this And let me see if I can share this screen easily. Wonderful. Okay, so you should now be seeing the Google Drive's preferences for backup and sync, and they're very similar for the Drive component here. So you'll see very shortly what I mean. In essence, what I've done here is I've told Google that I want to be able to back up. Okay, we're calling this a backup. This particular computer, right? And so I have the computer here, and I can select particular files that I want it to back up. And you can see that it says backing up all files and folders. Okay. Now, this is a backup because what is happening here is that it is taking these files and it is putting them up into the Google Drive environment and saving them there. It is a copy of the system. Now, I wouldn't consider this, though, a true backup in that sense. Because, say if I go to this folder here and I delete something from that folder, Google Drive is going to go up to its system and it will also delete that folder as well. So it's a it's a backup version, but it is a backup light. What I would really like for Google to do is to basically take this and say, give me a an an option that every 7 days it's going to back up a new version of that file and then go ahead and let me know that it will go ahead and delete it at some point in the future, right? So like maybe it backs it up every day, and every 7 days the oldest day's backup disappears. That would be a true backup. This is still in my mind backup light. It may be, you know, differently defined by others, but that's really how I see this here. Then we go down to, I'm sorry, so in the same section, you can see here that Google actually also gives you the ability to upload photos photos and videos that you are synchronizing in the system, or backing up as they're calling it, to the system as for photos and videos to Google Photos. So if you have photos that are being identified in the system, JPEGs, WebP, TIFFs, RAW files, those files will then get pulled from your local desktop and they'll be placed in Google Photos. This is independent of Google Drive. So those files that are backed up to Google Drive will be backed up to Google Drive. But you can, in addition, upload them to Google Photos. And remember, those then count against your storage. So both count against your storage in basically duplicate. If you delete something in Google Photos, though, note that if you delete them from the computer, that won't make any difference to Google Photos. Once it's in Google Photos, it's in Google Photos, and you have to go into Google Photos in order to delete those things there. A little bit different. So that I would consider a true backup, right? Because it's not deleting the file if it's on the system. Whereas if you were to delete any other file, it would go ahead and delete it from the backup system. Okay, then we have the Google Drive Sync. What Google Drive Sync does is it creates a folder on your local drive, and any files that are in Google Drive, when you go to drive.google.com, when you go to that file, you can actually sync your drive down to your computer. And that drive can be selective. You can say, I want to take everything that's in Google Drive and synchronize it to my local system, or I can select specific items. And that's what I've chosen to do here. I've chosen to select specific files that only come down to this system because I don't want everything from Google Drive down here. You may, and so you could just click sync everything and it'll go ahead and do that. Then next, you have a couple of other options that are really important here. When you are, I'll go back here. So note, let's see, back up here for each device, note that you have an option here under Google Drive that says remove items synced between Google Drive and this computer. I basically tell it to ask me before removing both copies. And so you just want to make sure that if you have items that are synchronized with Google Drive, if you remove an item, you want to make sure that you're either prompted to remove that item or to tell it to never remove both copies so that you don't lose something. I just choose for it to ask me, like, don't delete anything without asking me, and then it will ask me if that needs to be deleted. That way I know, something's being removed from the system that may not have a backup copy. And then last but not least, we have show a warning when you remove items. You can turn that on or off. That's not particularly all that useful, but it sometimes is. I like to have the notification on. Not everybody does. I have the system turn on backup and sync on this device. And then you can also show the file sync status item and the right click menu, meaning that when I right click on something, it can show me Google Drive in the drop down menu, both on Windows and Mac OS. So those are the features that are inside of the desktop application for Google Drive. It's just helpful to kind of keep abreast of the fact that those features are there in the system for you to be able to manage. I'm getting another question from Deborah. It says, when you download these uh, cloud-based drives, do they count against how much storage you have available on your desktop? Yes, they do. So if you have 100 GB storage and you download 50 gigabytes of data from Google Drive, that will take up space on your computer. Okay, so you have to be mindful of that. And so the only caveat to that is, as we talked about before, if you have Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, those don't take up space on your computer, or it takes up a de minimis amount of space, because those are just links to the cloud. So they're links to the browser. So they don't really take up very much space at all. But any other files that you do download and synchronize to your local system, those are taking up space on your local hard drive, and you should be mindful of that. Absolutely. Good question. Okay, just a quick note here. There are applications for both iOS and Android. So if you go over to the Google Play Store, you will find a Google Drive application, and you can go ahead and install that. You log in utilizing the same login for your Google account, Gmail account if you have a Gmail account, or on the Google Workspace account, you'd be logging in with your name at your domain, your first name, last name, whatever you have as your email address at yourbusinessname.com. You're going to log in using that custom email address and password, and that will then log you into Google Drive. You could be logged into multiple Google Drive accounts on your mobile devices. So you can be logged into your consumer Gmail account, you could be logged into your business account, and you can swap between those two very easily on the system. At that point, you can also upload to Google Drive from your mobile devices. So Google Drive gives you that capability of, if you come across a document and you're browsing the web, you can download it to your system and then upload it to Google Drive directly from the share sheet, the share option on Android, and of course the share sheet on iOS. So you're really given the capability of doing a lot of what you can normally do on the desktop. There are some limitations to what you can do on Google Drive on mobile, but you can do most things in Google Drive, even to the extent that even if you don't have like Google Docs installed or Google Sheets, you can still open Google Drive documents like Sheets and Docs and edit them without having the other applications installed. It's all kind of caked into Google Drive for you, which I really like. All right, so this brings us over to Google Drive itself. And what I want to do is I want to walk us through the interface so that you have an understanding of what Google Drive looks like. When you first log into Google Drive, it gives you kind of a little tour, which you can go through, and that's really helpful. Notice also that based on the consumer or workspace account you're in, I happen to be in our demo account that's a consumer account, so it doesn't really show me Google Drive for Teams here, but you can see it'll automatically prompt you to download the desktop application that you need for installing that on your local system to do backup and synchronization. So it prompts you there. I'm going to dismiss that, but you would download it and install it and then log into your account so that you have that set up for yourself. Now, in the Drive experience, we have some really great pieces of the puzzle here. At the top left, this Drive button takes us right back to this screen here. So if you ever need to get back to the home screen, to My Drive, that'll click on this button and it'll take you there. Now, if you're using Google Workspace, you will likely see your own logo here if you've set up your logo. So you'll see your logo here and you'll be able to click on your logo to come back here. Then we have search. As I said before, Google Drive, built by Google, they're the champions of search. And so you are capable of doing some fairly sophisticated searches. So for example, if I was looking for only PDFs, I can click on PDF. It'll then type PDF, and then give me that, those only in the search field. I can click on I can type in anything, I can type in words in a document, I can type in all kinds of other fun things. In this filtered icon, in the search options icon, if I click that down, you'll see that I get advanced search here, and you can search based on all kinds of interesting things. Now, at first, as we saw before, I could click on in the field itself, and it automatically gives me a filter for certain types of files. Well, if I go into the search options, it actually gives me all the various file types that it can search against. So from photos and videos all the way down to zip files, to video folders and sites. So if I was looking for a specific folder, I could literally type in type:folder and then something like takeout. And what it should produce is one single file, which is our Google Drive folder for takeout. So we have some really great granular functionality when it comes to searching. So get used to the search options here. And once you do a search, what's really great is that it actually goes ahead and provides you with the advanced search that it did in the system right up here. So it types it. See how I just selected the type folders? It typed in type colon folder in the top. If I wanted only things that I owned, you can see owner colon me. And if I said anywhere and I wanted to choose a specific location, I only want to find things that are in my drive. Click select. And now, of course, it's now showing the location for my drive. I can say in trash or starred. I can do all kinds of other fun things in order to be able to do that search. And it goes ahead and provides me with what the search is in that top bar so I can see in the future, okay, well, I just need to type this as opposed to having to click and drop down in the menu to all those options. Okay, so if we continue over to the right, we have support. And in the consumer side, support is really going to give you a few options for being able to go there. If you could click on help, it's going to take you to the help.google.com site where you can go ahead and get some information. You have training, which is going to give you some videos and other information on how to use Google Drive, and then updates, which will give you kind of a change log of what has recently come about as it relates to features, new functions within Google Drive there. Then to the right of that, you click on settings. And when we go to settings, we get a couple of options. Now, remember, when we first launched, we'll get that pop-up window in the bottom left-hand corner to download the Backup and Sync or Google Drive for desktop. But it also gives us settings and keyboard shortcuts. Keyboard shortcuts are great. So in essence, what you can do here is you can learn how to navigate Google Drive in the browser completely by keyboard. So you never have to take your hand off of the keyboard and go to the mouse in order to get to someplace. So just things like searching for things and finding particular items and so on and so forth. So for example, if I'm here and say that I select this folder, it's selected because it highlights in blue, but I actually want to do a search now. If I click the /, you see how it jumps the cursor directly up to the search field? That's just incredibly, it just increases the speed at which I can get things done. And so no matter where you are in Google Drive, that / is going to pop you up into the search in Drive field very quickly and easily. So just learn those shortcuts. They are so helpful. So click on the gear icon, click on shortcuts, and you will find the shortcuts there. You can always display the shortcuts using Control / or the question mark, which on my keyboard just happens to be Shift /. So Control / or the question mark will get you the pop-up to see the keyboard shortcuts, and you can learn those over time, which will really help you get around the system faster. All right, when we go to the gear icon again and click on settings, we then have the option of general notifications and manage apps. Under general, it tells us how much storage we have, and we can also then buy more storage. So you can see this is our demo account. We have about 1.3 gigabytes used of the account so far. If we needed to buy more storage, we could buy 200 gigabytes, we could buy a terabyte, we could buy 10 terabytes worth of additional data, and we don't have to buy anything additional beyond that. Google allows us to buy just more data in the system so that we have that. Well, when you do that, though, by the way, you are opting into the Google One program. Google One is their storage application packages, and they give you some discounts, like discounts off of hotels and discounts on various products. Anything that you buy from the Google Store, you actually get 10% back as credit. So I get credit every time I buy a Google product through the Google Store, and then the next Google product I buy, it's that much cheaper. And I've gotten fairly significant amounts of money from the amount of Google products I bought from the Google Store, so it can actually be very useful. But you have to be a Google One member, meaning paying for storage in order to be able to get that discount. So if you click on view items taking up storage, that'll take you to an interface that actually shows you how much storage is being taken up by Gmail, Google Photos, Google Drive, or otherwise. Next up is the convert uploads option. When you click on convert uploads, that means that if you upload, say, a Microsoft Word document, it will turn it into a Google Docs document from that Word document. If you upload a Microsoft PowerPoint presentation file, it will convert it into Google Slides. If you upload an Excel workbook, it will convert that into a Google Sheets workbook file in the system. So it'll turn it into a cloud format so that it can go ahead and do everything it normally can do. Now, mind you, if for some reason there's something specialized inside of the inside of the Word document, it may strip that out when it turns it into a Google Doc. For example, if you're using VB scripting, VBA, or something like that inside of the Word document, or if you have some advanced formulas inside of Microsoft Excel, those may not translate into Google Sheets or into Google Docs. So just remember that those things may be filtered out in that sense. Let's see. I see a question related to. It says on the Deborah's asking on the gear icon, must you download one of the two features? In other words, can you just work on Google Drive in the cloud? Yes, you absolutely could work on Google Drive completely and exclusively in the crowd in the cloud. You do not have to download Google Drive, the backup and sync application. You could just use it completely in the cloud. Under language, you can click on change language settings. This will go to your myaccount.google.com where you'll be able to then change your language settings. That's a master level language setting. You have the option of going offline. Now, this is a little bit different than backup and sync or drive for desktop. Okay, those are desktop applications that allow you to be able to utilize files on your local system. What offline does is it actually saves your most recently used Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides files in the browser. So it like saves it in the back end of your local system. So say you're getting on a plane trip. I do this all the time. I'm going on travel. I turn on offline Google Docs in the background, Google Drive in the background, saves my most recently used Google Docs, Sheets, and Slides. And now when I'm on the flight, I need to go do a little bit of writing for my next book. I sit down, I open up those documents. They've been saved in the system. I'm able to edit the documents. And then when I get back onto the internet, when I get off the flight, I get to my hotel room, open it up, connect to the internet, boom. Google Docs now synchronizes, Google Drive now synchronizes those Google Docs that are on the offline mode into the synchronized files of the online version, and it does it all in the background for me. Okay, so very, very helpful if you want to be able to use Google Drive offline for docs, sheets, and slides. Remember, they're limited to those three types of documents for offline use, and it considers what is offline, what's recent. You can actually go ahead and manually force that from some of these files to say, I want to use this doc offline. So make sure to use it offline. What I do is I just open up all the files that I want when I'm going to be on a flight, open it up an hour or two before the flight, and then close them, and then it'll get sucked into the offline mode. Just give it enough time to go ahead and do it. Then density is basically the view of the files. So you can see right behind the window here, you can see that these files are kind of spaced apart. That's uncomfortable. If I go to Cozy, you can see that those files just shrunk ever so slightly a little bit closer. And then if I click on Compact, you can see that they jam even closer together. Okay, so that's the difference between density, but if you're trying to look at all your files really close together, that's one thing to do there. Suggestions is actually this set of things behind here. So you see where it says suggested behind this window? If I uncheck this, it'll go ahead and remove it. And what it does is it just basically uses machine learning to determine whether or not I've recently used a file, or I've recently looked at one, or that I'm going to use a file. So say if I use a file really often, it'll probably put it up in the suggested area because it thinks that I'm going to use that in the near future. And so when I open up Google Drive, it'll just be there. I have to admit, on mobile, it's super helpful because I don't have to search for things most of the time. If I just go to my account in that suggested area, it usually has the thing that I want to use immediately at the top. It knows me that well. Under notifications, you can force Google Drive to provide you with browser notifications. You'll see that I can't do that here because I'm in an incognito window. So if I click on the browser notifications, it says I don't have permission to be able to do so. But in your browser, you would be able to set that in a normal window. You can also get updates from Google Drive. Say, for example, somebody requested to be shared on a document, or if you've recently shared something, and somebody made an edit to that document, you'll get your notifications via email instead of through the browser. And then, of course, manage apps. This is where you can go and look at the various apps that you've connected to Google Drive and manage those pieces. Okay, and so you can say, well, I don't want this to be any longer connected, or I would like to use this particular option within this particular application. It's likely here under the settings gear icon and then under manage apps. Okay, so that's the top row of Google Drive. Then we come down to the next layer, which is this kind of left-hand navigation menu. We can create new files, and we've already talked about that. We can upload. We can create a new folder, right? We can create a new folder in the system, and we can title that folder whatever we want. And this is going to create it, of course, inside of My Drive. My Drive is a special folder. Basically, it's your home folder, and it contains everything in your system. Okay, so everything that you're saving is inside of My Drive. In essence, that is not one of your backed up computers underneath this system. So when we talked about backup and sync or drive for desktop, those files are here under computers, but everything else is under My Drive. Then we have file upload and file folder upload. So with file upload, when we click on this, it gives us the option to upload a singular file from our desktop. If we want to upload, or multiple files from our desktop, if we want to upload an entire folder, we can use the folder upload. And we can also actually just drag and drop things directly into the browser from our desktop. So if you had, a floating window of your files, you could just drag and drop those here onto the system. You'll see it turn blue, and then you release it, and then it'll go ahead and upload it. You can actually also drag it over an individual folder, and it will actually upload it to that folder that you see here on screen as well. Continuing under new, we've already talked about all of these files. You can create any of these new files just by clicking on the buttons, or you can actually drop down for some of these and choose a blank form of that document or from a template, and it'll open up the template gallery for you to choose. We have computers, so if I had any computers synchronized to backup and sync, they would show here and they would show our backups. We can see shared with me, so any files or directories that have been shared with me will be under here, and that's really helpful so that you can see everything that people have shared with you. Under recent, it just basically sorts our documents and files based on what we've most recently utilized. Any starred files, when we star a file, say that I go here, I can see that these files are, see all this information here, but I can actually also star a file by right-clicking on it and then clicking Add to Starred. Add to Starred adds this little blue star here to the file name, and then when I click on Starred, it goes ahead and sorts those files so that I can see them all together. So if I'm working on a big project and I want to make sure that I have all the files that I'm working on together, I can go ahead and star those documents and then come back to them. It's just a helpful way for us to be able to organize and manage those documents. Google Drive in the Teams environment actually gives you a spaces option where you can actually create these spaces and do that. If you've deleted a Google Drive document, it will be in the trash, and those trashed items last for 30 days and then they delete. Okay, it used to be that they just stayed there forever, but Google has updated that now because of abuse. And so when you click on trash, you will see those items, and there's a 30-day countdown. And after 30 days, they delete. Okay, so now back to My Drive. You have the options of being able to see your file folders by clicking on the disclosure arrow to the left of any file, in this case My Drive, and you'll see those files here. Note that I can also drag and drop just by clicking, holding, and dragging any file from My Drive or anywhere else that I'm in to a particular folder, and you'll see that the folder not only turns blue, it highlights blue when I hover over it to tell me where I'm going to drop it, but it also gives me that little pop-up name. See, it says 12345 LF. It tells me that I'm dropping it onto the right file. Now, when I do come to a folder and there's another subfolder, if I hold down on top of it, let me do this again just so you can see here. So say this is a closed file. I'm going to take this file here. I'm going to drag it up. Let's try that again. I'm going to drag it up here. You see that by holding it down long enough over this, it actually opened up this interior folder, and it gives me the option of being able to now drag and drop it over that folder as well. So you have some granular control over being able to move files from one place to the other. By right-clicking on any file or folder, you're capable of seeing all of the options associated with it here in the main section, and we can also sort based on name, owner, name and last opened by me. You can sort based on those two options. So you can see here I can sort up and down for name in alphabetical order, and then you can see last opened by me. If I click on this, I can actually get a drop down menu, and it gives me the option of saying last opened by me, last modified by me, or just last modified. When's the last time this thing was touched? And then go ahead and sort based on that particular list, and it'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so we can sort based on those two different file lists. Now, just a quick tip. Whenever you single click on a file, you can see here that it highlights in blue. And then if we go over to the right hand side, we can see this additional eye icon, information icon pane, this right side pane. And you can see here that it's actually being displayed by this eye information icon. So if I click it on and off, it actually pops out and pops closed. This is helpful if you want to be able to see more stuff on screen and you don't want to actually get the pane to open up. But inside the pane, you can actually add a description to any folder or file. So if I wanted to add notes, I can add notes about this folder directly in here, and it's not modifying anything related to the folder itself. It's just giving me a place-to-place information. So if you needed to give people something, some kind of information that they need or want, you can go ahead and do that here inside the system. You can see all the basic details about it. You can click on activity, and you can see what activity is and has happened around this particular file folder or file in the system as well. Okay, very, very helpful to be able to see. Up here, we can see the various options for sharing and deletion and some other functions. These are all things that you can basically get from right-clicking on any file folder or file itself. So you can see that the options here are pretty much replicated up here when we have an item selected. And then last but not least is this option, which is the grid view. Grid view is the option to be able to turn all of the items that we're looking at in our Google Drive in a format that is tiled, as opposed to a list view, which is just like it sounds, giving us a list of all of the items that are here as well. So we have all of those items. And then, of course, this is our sidebar, which gives us access to calendar, keep, and tasks. Something I didn't actually mention earlier is that Google Drive actually also encompasses keep. So all of your keep notes, if you use Google Keep, all those keep notes are technically bundled into Drive, as I understand it. So those Google Keep notes are also a part of your file storage. So if you're putting large amounts of data into Google Keep, those will count against your Google Drive data because it's a part of your Google Drive storage. But you can open up, Google Keep alongside here, and you can see these items connected to each other. One fancy little tip is that Google Keep allows you to you can put things into Google Keep and then draw them into Google Slides presentations, which is really helpful if you're like thinking of ideas for a presentation. You capture them into Google Keep, and then when you're ready to go produce the presentation, you can open up a Google Slides presentation and then pull in your Google Keep items like images and otherwise that you've captured there. So that is Google Drive in a nutshell. And Google Drive is just really, really powerful and capable of doing so much. And yeah, I'm happy to now take any questions that folks might have, and then we will go ahead and close out. So let me go back to here. What happened? I clicked on screen share, screen share, screen share. Wonderful. Okay, so let's go on to Q&A, and let me look at the Q&A panel and the chat panel. I apologize, I'm looking in two different systems. So those of you who joined me from Web and Beyond community, you're seeing yourselves in Zoom, and those of you who are in the webinar panel are seeing yourselves with the Q&A panel. So let me answer any questions. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A panel or in the chat, and I can go ahead and review them. So let me go through these questions one by one. So I didn't cover the Google Workspace plans. If you go to get Google Work.space, if you go to that URL, you will be taken to the Workspace plans, and you'll be able to see all the pricing. They change, on occasion, so I don't want to date this video that quickly. Go to GET Google Work.space, and you'll go ahead and be able to see all the various plans that they have available. Right now, you have starter, standard, and plus, and each of them come with different amounts of storage and different pricing based on that storage and other access capabilities within the system. And so those are the plans available to you. In terms of, I'm seeing some questions here about the differences between utilizing Google Drive in the cloud and Google Drive on desktop. I think I answered that earlier, but just know that you can do everything you need to do in terms of managing Google Drive from the web desktop. What Google Drive Backup and Sync or Google Drive for Desktop, the individual or Teams versions, what those allow you to do is to synchronize and or quote unquote back up your files from those local machines to Google Drive. So you are giving the option of accessing files that you may say have in Google Drive on your desktop. And since those are synchronized, even if you disconnect and go offline, those files are available to you. I really recommend having Google Drive Backup and Sync or Google Drive for Desktop installed, even if it's only for a select amount of files, because that gives you the capability of having those pieces in there. If you do a lot of photography and if you do a lot of management of video, it's helpful to have those backed up as well, utilizing the backup to Google Photos. And I know I have it turned on for my on my phone, and that's been incredibly useful because it just provides a true backup, because it's taking those photos and copying them to Google Photos, and just having all those photos and videos just sucked right into Google Photos has been really helpful for me in that sense. And that's actually utilizing the Google Photos app, not the Google Drive application. So just be mindful of that. There's a question here about HelloSign. Is HelloSign a digital or cursive signature? Is it accepted in many states in lieu of a cursive? So HelloSign is, I think, universally accepted. I think the Global E-Sign Act requires it, the federal law that was signed into law by President Bill Clinton at the time. And so I'm pretty sure that you can use HelloSign in whatever capability. It allows you to basically type a signature, or you can actually on screen scribble a signature of yours, whether that be on the desktop or on your phone. So it gives you the ability to sign, whatever you want in those spaces where you need to in order for it to be done. So I think you should be able to. But if you have any questions, reach out to the HelloSign team by going to hellosign.com, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer your questions there. But I've not had any issues with HelloSign in it's been a decade of using it, and it's been fantastic for our uses. And I think they have a free plan where you can use it for like X number of items. We use it for document templating, so clients, we don't have to recreate the same contract over and over again, so we pay in order to have access to that templating feature. But there is a free version where you can send X number of contracts, but you have to do it manually each time, which is fine if you want to keep it free. Okay, I think that's all the questions we have time for today. I just wanted to thank everybody for joining me here for this Google Drive for Small Business webinar as a part of the Google and Beyond, the Web and Beyond webinars series. And again, I'm Ray Sidney Smith. You can follow us on all the socials on screen. If you run across a real issue and you need my help beyond, tech support, feel free to reach out to me. But if you are interested in implementation services, you're trying to set up Google Workspace or something like that, feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to talk to you about our implementation services and or licensing. You have to figure out what kind of licensing you want for any particular account. We can help you determine that. I think we have some Google Workspace promo codes as well still. So if you need, I think it's 10% off your first year of Google Workspace. I don't know if it works for Essentials, but I think we still have some promo codes. So feel free to email support@w3cinc.com. So support@w3cinc.com, and someone on my staff will send you the promo code if we have those available. So feel free to take advantage of the promo codes. And I think it's 10% off your first full year. So each month you pay monthly, but it takes 10% off for the year, for the first year of service. So that's that. We have a podcast. Each week, I do a live stream called Web and Beyond Live, and we do all kinds of fun discussions on digital marketing in those live streams each Monday. And so with that, thank you all for joining me here for the Web and Beyond webinars for Google Drive for Small Business, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.